Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Reformed Dissenters, the show where Reformed Christians dissent against popular ideas of culture by asserting a biblical worldview. Thank you so much for joining us today, whether you're watching us or listening to us. It doesn't matter. We're just glad you're here. My name is Bruce Johnson. I'm joined here in the wonderful state of South Dakota with my good friend Joseph Lassiter.
Hello, it's Friday.
Hey, it's Friday. We're also joined by my brother Jacob Johnson back in Pennsylvania.
Hello.
Sweet. Also, actually, yeah, as a note, speaking of Pennsylvania, I'm going to be in Pennsylvania next week. So, Jacob and I are going to be recording in person, and Joe is going to be joining us through Zoom. So it's like we can never have all three of us in the same room together. It's just like that's a unspoken law or something. So, yeah. But next week, Jake and I are going to be in person, and Joe's going to be remote. So we're just kind of shuffling things around. So, you know, we're excited for that. Also, I know last week we didn't have our episodes up on Odyssey and Gab TV. It's just because I was also out of town last week and wasn't on Wi-Fi where I could upload those. Those I have to upload every single day, so I wasn't able to do that. We're going to have unfortunately, the same thing this week. Not next week, though. Next week, I'll be able to upload them to Gab TV and Odyssey, so keep alert for that. All right, today... Oh, actually, I have to announce the website, trdshow.net. That's the website you can go. All sorts of links. We were, censored on YouTube, in case you missed that somehow. We've been announcing it all week. We were censored on YouTube. I'm not going to say we're like proud. We are kind of like, sweet. A little proud. A little excited. Because that means we're probably doing something right. Right, Joe?
Yes.
So we were at least acknowledged by YouTube as a thing.
YouTube has brought its wrath on us.
Upon us, right. So if you want to support our fragile hearts,
Our fragile
hearts.
I thought we were supposed to have a heart of stone.
It's true. Heart of stone, like an uncaring heart.
No, we're not supposed... That's not
wait,
the
I got
goal.
that.
That's not the goal.
I got it wrong. No, Pharaoh had a hardened heart of stone.
Right, exactly.
We don't want that.
And Pharaoh was a bad dude. It's not great. That's not what we're emulating here. Follow us on our pro First Amendment platform so you can actually, see our content, because it would be sad if you thought we weren't uploading episodes anymore and it was just because YouTube doesn't like, the First Amendment and loves communism. So, follow us on Rumble. Follow us on Gab TV, Odyssey, gab.com/TRD show. Follow us on Getter. That's a lot of links, so it's easier if you just go to our website and click the button for each of those platforms by going to trdshow.net. All right. Don't forget to send us your topic ideas. Today is topic day. We're talking about social media, pros and cons, how to use it for God's glory, given the society that we live in. And we're also talking about relationships. What does God say about communication and relationships? So, sounds like a really fun topic. I'm really excited to get into it. But, hey, if you've got things that you want to share with us, topics, questions, differing perspectives, whatever, we want to hear from you. Send us an email at trdshow@protonmail.com. All right, let's get into things. Before we do that, though, I'm going to pass it on over to Joe so that he can talk about our verse this week. Take it away, Joe.
Our verse this week is Isaiah 1:22 through 23. Your silver has became dross, your best wine mixed with water. Your princes are... I can't speak. Your princes are rebels and companions of thieves. Everyone loves a bride and runs after gifts. They do not bring justice to the fatherless, and the widow's cause... I cannot read. Cause does not come to them.
Nice. Yeah,
I am
thank you.
having an English day problem. Hey, it's Friday.
Hey, it's Friday. Silver's become dross. What we're talking about there is the devaluing of currency. Your wine's been mixed with water, watered down, right? Princes are rebels, companions of thieves. That's pretty obvious. We talked about inflation this week and how that's thievery and how our princes, our rulers are thieves. Everyone loves a bribe. Oh, goodness. When you talk about politics, that's all you hear are bribes. Runs after gifts. They don't bring justice, right? This is a description of a nation under judgment. And unfortunately, it looks pretty darn similar to America in 2022. So we talked a lot more about this verse, Isaiah 20, chapter 1, 22, and 23. We talked a lot more about that on Wednesday and Monday. So if you haven't seen those episodes, check them out today. Now's a good time. All right, let's move into our topic of the week. Again, that's social media. We're talking about social media, the pros, the cons, how to use it for God's glory given the society in which we live, and also what does God say about communication and relationships. So we don't have a ton of time, so we're going to try and get through as much as we can. But I'm thinking here we start out by talking about the cons, which I think to me was some of the easier ones to come up with because I'm not a huge fan of social media.
Oh.
Pretty much the only time I ever use it is for the show when I need to post something. So I've kind of just deleted it all from my phone and don't even use it anymore. But so the cons for me weren't that hard to come up with. But I'll list my main one. We can discuss it. And if you guys disagree, I'd love to hear it. And then you can list some of yours. But my first con is pridefulness and self-absorption are extremely prominent in social media circles, since one of the main things people do on these types of platforms is post pictures of themselves or their own lives, right? That's kind of what you do. In addition to that, people can also create, like these platforms, social media platforms can kind of cause people to create like a fake version of themselves online that maybe doesn't actually reflect who they are in real life. It looks nice on screen. It looks like, hey, I've got a wonderful life. I just quoted that movie.
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. I feel like that is probably a song or something.
It's a Christmas movie.
Christmas movie? Okay, yeah. It is a good Christmas movie,
It was
actually.
a black and white.
Yes.
And then they made it into color.
Really? I've never seen the color version. I've only ever watched the black and white. We watch it like almost every Christmas. It's a good movie.
They just
Yeah,
made it
I've only
into
seen the
color.
black and white.
Yeah,
It's the exact same thing. They just put color in it.
that's neat. Just mix some paint in there, see what happens. So what do you guys kind of agree that that's fairly prominent? Pridefulness, self-absorption. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, I would say that is true. That is fairly prominent. But I think in going into this conversation in this topic, we should understand that social media is one of those things that in and of itself is neutral unless it is being controlled by man, right? So
Do you think so?
yes, because social media in and of itself, these platforms are neutral, right? They can be used for good and they can be used for bad. Yes, that may, and again, when you're talking about the way people use them, that's not social media. That's the way human man is interacting with social media.
So let's back up for a second. Define our terms. When we say social media, Joe, what comes to your head first when you think about social media?
When I think of social media, what I personally come up with is any form of communication via cellular device. That be computer,
Does it
that
have to be?
phone.
Oh, okay.
That
Electronic device.
okay, yeah, that's a better. Unless it's robots and you work on PLCs and stuff, that does not count as social media and programming stuff. But whenever you and another person are communicating via
Online.
the cell, using the cell towers. Well,
Or
whether that
you could be using
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi is not cell towers, so
Don't you still have to go to the cellular device up in outer
Nope.
space to go down?
nope.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember
Using
what
the
it was.
internet to communicate. Yeah.
Okay, so anything that is not a face-to-face conversation,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is not a letter.
Yeah. So, when I think social media, I'm thinking anything where you are communicating with other people online. Earlier we were having a discussion kind of before we started recording, and we were talking about like maybe even YouTube is a form of social media because people are interacting in the comment section. People are posting videos that other people are liking and then maybe making reactive videos too or stuff like that. I think basically how I would define it is anytime you are interacting in a public square online. So I wouldn't say that texting is social media. I would say
Right.
one-on-one messaging is more messaging.
Okay.
But I would say that anytime it's a public square where there's a group of people and you're online and you have the ability to post multimedia, you can post text, you can post all sorts of different things, videos, what have you, That I would define as social media. What are your thoughts, Jake?
But I mean, your argument stays the same though, because you're still talking about even in texting with someone, you can still create your own false
You
fake.
can, but I think that's a different conversation to have. Like that's kind of
Okay, all right. So you consider they're two different topics, even though they're
I would say
influenced
so.
kind of by the same thing. Okay.
They can be, but I think so when we're talking about pridefulness, right? Now, we do know that the heart is deceptive above all else. Who can know it, right? So we are just naturally, even when there aren't other people around, we are automatically think more highly of ourselves than we ought, right? But also, the larger the group of people, when you have an influence, when you have, let's say you walk into a group of people and everybody's given a megaphone, which is kind of what this is. It's like you walk into a circle of people, everybody's got a megaphone, they can say whatever they want, right? Well, not nowadays on Facebook, they're censoring you, but let's pretend that wasn't a thing. You could say whatever you want. Most people, I believe generally and statistically, I think this is true as well, will start to make personas of themselves. Because of the larger group, they want people to think, oh, that's a great person. Oh, I'm such a great person because I have this picture and I took it here and, all that kind of stuff, right? So they're trying to influence people to think differently of themselves and think more highly of themselves.
And I'd like to counter that, just
Go ahead.
because I know I've been involved with social media and I've been around with people who've been involved with social media. You really have to have your worldview grounded. What is your worldview?
Yeah. In any conversation.
Because sure, we can say a lot of people use social media to hype themselves. They like to post pictures about them, but another aspect with a lot of Christians, especially, they use social media to spread the gospel out there.
Yes,
and
that's my
and
pros
that would
list.
kind of be moving into kind of the pros. So
Yeah,
um,
we can do that. I mean, I have 2 more cons. So do you
Okay.
want to hear those and we can address them and then move on to our pros?
Sure.
Okay.
yeah.
Because I
But-
do agree with you, by the way, on that pro, that it does help you spread the gospel
Right.
and grow the kingdom. But that is the next segment.
I just figured since
Yeah.
we were talking and looking
Yeah,
down
yeah.
at
I got you.
what people use social media
yeah.
as is
Yeah. What are the
going on
uses
now.
of it? For sure.
Yeah, and I think definitely keeping this as like a conversation.
Yeah.
Not really segmenting it, but it's still. I think my point still kind of stands that it is without the touch of human interaction, without it being used. Okay, social media in and of itself, I do believe, is neutral. However, it's how people use it, and again, all of the arguments we've had so far in the pros and cons, the cons for right now, has been how people have used it. It's not that social media in and of itself is the bad thing. It's how the people have been using it.
So, one thing I'd like to contribute to that too is, okay, this can be true of really anything, but anything can become an idol if it's not used in moderation, right?
Correct.
So
Right.
one of my main cons is that, social media causes people to spend more time on electronic devices in generally non-productive ways. Generally. Okay, I'm completely generalizing here. People could bring up an example. Well, this one person only uses it for, spreading the gospel and blah, blah, blah. Well, obviously I'm not talking about them. Well, yeah. I use it for the show, right? That's basically the only time I ever get on social media. But generally non-productive ways. Because if you think about it, what is it that you're actually doing with your time when you're on social media? That's I think a valid question, right? I think it would depend again, most of these conversations, like with our music discussion, Jake, it depends on the person.
Right.
Depends on the if you're able to moderate yourself, but also if you're able to be in the kinds of groups and subsections of people that are not bad influences on you, which leads me into my next con, which we can talk about, or we can flesh this one out more. But what are your thoughts on, my point that it causes people to spend more time on electronic devices in generally non-productive ways? What are your thoughts?
I very much agree on that aspect, in the fact that again, social media isn't good or bad. It's how the person uses it. It's the exact same as money. It's exact same thing as alcohol. It's the exact same thing as guns. You can throw all those into that same category. It's based on how the person uses it.
Right.
And I really think you're right. People do spend a lot of time. And I also kind of think that it's based on their worldview as well. Can they get addicted? Very much so. They can get very much addicted to social media. But again, it's all on the beholder, not it of itself, by itself.
Yeah. And, I think up until this point, we've been dealing with some very broad, high-level things. But I want to narrow in on one specific example, if I may.
You may not.
I may not. Oh, man.
Go ahead.
I've been rejected. All right. So one of my main cons is that groups that people may not have gravitated towards before social media can begin to seep into people's feeds. They can start to, the algorithm, the almighty algorithm, can actually tends to lean a lot of people towards some not great directions, or just somehow some not great groups end up in people's feeds. This happens a lot. And I have a very specific example. Michael Knowles interviewed a transgendered it was a woman who transgendered into a man, and then eventually realized this is horrible, horrific. I'm going to go back to how God created me and went back to being a woman, which was a good story, but it was a dark, very sad story all the way through until the end, right? So Michael Knowles interviewed this person. The reason they were sucked into that was because of social media. They were originally sucked into that horrific world via social media. They started to find groups in their feed, people started to pop up that they didn't know in real life. They never would have met if it weren't for social media. And they started to lead them in a very, very dark direction. And this is not just this person. This has happened countless times, thousands of times, right? As 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals. Oftentimes, people are pulled into these kinds of crowds without even realizing it. It's subliminal, right?
I want to go into the dark web. No, okay, not
really
the dark
don't.
web.
You really
don't.
don't.
Just the websites itself. And at least for me, it's very important that I don't have my Gmail linked with my Facebook, which is linked with my Instagram, which is linked with my Gab, which is linked with my Rumble, because the moment I search, and for the example of, again, when I was in college, we were looking up some when gay marriage started and when it was legalized in the United States. Okay, I was doing that for my own personal
For a college
research.
assignment. Yeah.
Then that algorithm, with it being, with my Gmail kind of being linked with my YouTube, YouTube starts popping those things up. Now, if I would have had my Facebook, my Instagram, my Rumble, Rumble and Gab, I don't know. I think they're more conservative.
Yeah.
But if I would have had all those linked to my Gmail account,
Yeah.
I would have started getting more algorithm for lesbians and gays and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So I think an important thing is here, if you're doing research for a paper, college experiment thing, it's don't keep your all of your accounts connected. Because that algorithm is, if once it takes one, it takes all.
Yeah.
Fair point.
And like we've been saying, and that's the algorithm that these people have created to kind of push people in their own agenda and in their own direction that they want people to be pushed into.
Yeah.
And so that, again, that's the sin nature in those people wanting to, push people into that. And again, it's a little bit hard. And I kind of know the answer to this question, right? And but I just want to ask it for the sake of the audience. What if someone says, and you could bring up the public school argument as well, but what if someone says, well, I need to be in these crowds in order to help evangelize them?
Yeah. Well,
What would you say to someone who said that?
if that's your stated goal,
Mhm.
it's, I think, no different than going into any other mission field. And honestly, I don't think restricting it to the missions field is even a good mindset to be in either. Evangelism can happen anywhere, right? And we had Evan Grimm on the show back in, I think, January. I think it was. And he was talking about that too. Don't just think of mission work as being in a different country or whatever, right? It can happen right outside your front door. And so, yeah, I would say think of it as any other mission field. Be careful. Be guarded. Do it. That's great. That's a good idea. Yeah, those people do need to be convicted of their sins and turn to Christ and see the love of Christ and the benefits of what he has called us to do, his work, right? They need that too. But the right kinds of people, I think, need to be there, right? I mean, Evan Grimm was talking about people who struggle with specific sins. You shouldn't go into the mission field if you're struggling with these things and you can't overcome them, because you're going to be no better than the people that you're trying to help, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I'm answering my own question, but
That's why you asked
thinking
it,
about
right?
thinking about the public schools and how we would say these children who are not strongly grounded in the truth, you're sending them, but
Yep.
you're playing it under the guise of, oh, it's so they can help evangelize the public schools.
The first thing that
And
came to my
it's-
mind was that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, these children are going to get corrupted,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're going to find themselves in bad company.
Yeah.
And
Which is why. Oh, go ahead.
but it's the problem of you want to make sure that you have strong foundational principles and strong biblical
Yeah.
truth to ground yourself in, and so to which I think the argument kind of leads towards social media. And again, someone can make an argument for or against. I'm just positing this idea, and maybe someone can say this is not true, and that I'm comparing apples to oranges here. But social media is kind of in the same way. Should younger children and even kids in their teens, until they have strong biblical foundations, should they be involved in social media?
Yes. Oh, yeah. That, I think that's an excellent question. We didn't make that distinction at the beginning of this, so I think that's really good. What we're kind of arguing on is the basis, the platform of mature adults who are solid in their worldview, and we're talking about subconscious things that might lead people into sin subconsciously, like pridefulness and whatever. But yeah, we didn't even state that, no, this is adults. We're not talking about children here.
Right.
But yeah, I would say no way in heck should children be on social media. It's for so many reasons. Not the least of which is the corruption that you're talking about, right? The same reason that government schools are not something that are good for children. And I would argue school systems in general, because of how wide and vast that audience is, the amount of people that they'll be interacting with at such a young age for such long periods of time, right? And with social media for children, it's not even just the people you're interacting with, it's the habits you're starting to develop at such a long age. Perpetually, it's like Pavlov's dog in a way, right? Like, ooh, ding, my phone went off. Ooh, somebody said something. This becomes your world. Your phone, your computer, the social media becomes your world, and not in a good way. It becomes an idol very easily. So, yeah, especially for children who can't moderate.
And for a little bit more specifically and a little bit more context, I want to ask, is there a cutoff point? Well, not a cutoff point. What I mean is there a time in which you would say, or would you put it at an age limit or a maturity limit? And probably, I bet you would say maturity limit, because an age limit doesn't really determine whether or not that person is based upon strong biblical principles.
Yeah.
But okay, if we're going with maturity, I kind of answered my own question. If that, then who is deciding on whether or not that person is strongly grounded enough and that person is mature enough to be involved in social media.
Yeah. You have any thoughts on that, Joe?
No, I just want to get rolling since we are close to running out of time to the positive side.
Joe loves, yeah, all right. You really want to get to the positive, so.
Sorry,
All right.
I wanted the positive. I thought, see, I have had this argument since 2018, and I have found a lot of pros to social media. So it was easier for me to find pros rather than cons
Wow.
on this.
All right. Well,
So-
I'm interested in hearing some of these. Yeah, I lean definitely more on the con side. So,
Same.
let's answer Jake's question really quickly, though. If you could restate that, actually, Jake, just so that it's not hanging there.
So basically, who is deciding that these children are mature enough to be involved in social media?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. And I think, it comes down to, hey, at what age would you send someone out into the world on their own? Because you have to think about it. That's what you're doing. You're inviting these people into your house to talk to your children directly, right? Or indirectly, however it may be. They're still hearing them, right? I mean, in the interview with Michael Knowles and this transgendered lady, she was like, she was like, hey, would you have a sleepover with these people? Would you be comfortable with your child going to their house and staying there for the night? Because that's kind of what you're doing. You're inviting them to have direct contact with your children. At what age are you comfortable with your children having that level of communication with people? I think that would be the question to ask. All right. Well, good question, Jake. Thanks for bringing that up. Joe, I'll pass it over to you because pros for me on this side, we're not easy to come up with. So go ahead.
I love getting pros. I'm a positive side.
Sweet.
Anyway, so I find social media as it is always I've always seen it as a tool. It's not a let's spend all my entire day on it. It's always been a tool that helps. Because as an electrician, yes, YouTube, but there's a Facebook group chat that I'm part of, or not group chat, that allows us electricians to communicate and say, oh, this is something that we've seen in the field. How do we fix this? Or can we fix this? Or do we have to have somebody else, a more professional, to fix this? So forth and so on. So it really helps with trying to fix things. But I have a lot of friends from all over the states, anywhere from Florida to Alaska. Yeah, Alaska to Texas to New York to even California. I said it. I said it out. So I have a lot of friends and a lot of connections throughout the entire United States, and it's kind of nice to be able to talk to them and communicate with them, and we have Bible studies even on via Zoom, and so that's one of the big things that I find as a positive. Okay, maybe that's 4 or 5 different things that I just let but that's a lot of what I like to use social media for. It's to help stay connected, and I'm able to talk to professionals who out in the electric field that I don't have the answer to, but they'd have the answer to. Yeah. But that's that's a skim down of why I think social media is pro.
Yeah, and I totally agree, and I think so I have two, and they're kind of exactly what you just said. One is more social and one is more gospel oriented or kingdom oriented. But, my first one is social media can help connect people across the world in ways that, weren't possible before. It can help people stay connected even when they move away or, what have you, right? They might have lost contact with them before, had to send letters or whatever, and now they don't have to, which is nice. So that's the social aspect of it, which is nice. But then, also people can share the gospel through pictures and posts. They can also, on top of just evangelism, which evangelism is only half of it, right? they can also help Christians grow in their studying of Scripture. It allows for education and the kinds of iron sharpens iron discussions that would have required people to meet up in person previously, right? So you can post a lot of that stuff. The nice thing with social media is it's asynchronous, which means you can post something and then somebody can come back in an hour and respond to it. And then you come back 2 hours later and respond to it. It doesn't have to be instantaneous, which is nice. And you can get a lot of people's perspectives, a lot of that, so that community. And it does come back to the community, the kinds of communities that you're in.
I will say ever since COVID, there has been a lot more pros to social media for me.
Very interesting.
But I mean, with that, talking about it's asynchronous, is it still comes on the other side, the con, because now people are learning, are not having good conversations of the back and forth.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
having a conversation which is cut up,
Yeah.
and so it's hurting their conversations with other people. It's making them, I don't know. I don't know exactly what it does.
Yeah.
I've just have heard a lot of studies which show that it hurts their conversations with people.
That's really
I can
interesting.
dive into that too because I have.
Yeah. Well, we got about 2 minutes left, so
Shoot,
Go
I don't
for
have
it.
enough time. But direct message. If you aren't, let's see if I can remember my statistics correctly. 60% of a conversation isn't by the words we speak. It's about our body language, our eye contact, our hand gestures. As you can tell, I do a lot of hand gestures on the show.
Same.
So I believe it's 60% of our communication comes from visual aids, and only 40% comes from what the person's actually saying. With a direct message, it cuts that 60% off, and so you only get words on the screen. And now you can't even your brain doesn't know how to interpret the emotion that's being put.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, we have emojis, but emojis don't cut it. They just don't. And I have to say, with video call and Zoom and Google Meets and stuff, it has still helped, but you're not there to actually hear the actual words. You don't see. You only see on a 2D screen when your brain needs that 3D visual. So
Very interesting. Dude,
yeah.
That's a really good point to bring up. Thank you.
But again, on the positive side, it's been able to keep people connected. And there was a conference that I went to. It's called Summit Ministries. And then after that, I did that in 2020, so it was over Zoom. I was a part of that. And after that, a group of us got together, and we're still communicating via Google Hangouts. And we're still connected, even though we aren't we haven't met each other per se. We've met each other over Zoom, so it would be really great for all of us to meet together. And I forgot there's one overseas. I don't remember where he's from.
That's cool.
But yes,
Yeah. So there's definitely
lots of positives.
There's pros as well. There's definitely pros. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So
I'm a pro communications
Yeah,
guy.
no, this was really good. This was really interesting. And I think wrapping up here, I think ultimately, again, same with some of our other discussions, it comes down to the person.
It comes down to your worldview.
It does come down to worldview. That's a big part of it. And yeah, do you have that self-control, moderation, in order to keep it from being an idol? If not, don't do it. If so, do it in moderation and do it for the growth of God's kingdom, which, by the way, that also includes keeping in touch with people. Keeping in touch with your family, like Joe was saying earlier, keeping in touch with people who you wouldn't have been able to keep in touch with before. It does provide some fantastic opportunities for that. So, all right, well, that is it for today's show, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget, go to trdshow.net. That's where you can find all sorts of cool stuff. Go to trdshow.net/refer so you can get some free stuff like free mugs, free stickers, all sorts of really cool stuff. trdshow.net/refer. And until then, we will see you on Monday.
And remember, everyone, in all that you do, do as unto the Lord.